answers close down thinking. And so to me, there's an incredible gift in the living in wonder, the willingness to continually inquire into the unknown.
What's happening, y'all? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now, where we're bringing the village to the brothers. Every couple of weeks, you can look forward to a quick inspirational message or a thought-provoking guest with knowledge and wisdom, all geared towards helping you be the best father that you can be. We're bringing the village to you. Now it's your turn to do something with what you learned. All right, y'all. Let's go. What's going on, fellas? This is Coach Mike D, your favorite personal development coach, with another episode of Black Fathers Now. Now, look, I have a brother on the show today that really has a story. He has a journey, but he's really doing something that we all need to really pay attention to, right? He's in an area, or he's in a segment of life, or he's in a segment of business that we are all in need of, and that's alignment. And the brother that I'm talking about is none other than Didier Sylvain. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, Didier Sylvain. Yeah, you got it.
Oh, Didier Sylvain.
Thank
sorry.
You, Thank you, brother. No, it's all good.
No doubt. But Didier Sylvain, he's an experienced life alignment coach. And we're going to talk a little bit about life alignment coaching. But he's a consultant. He's currently based out of LA, and he's pursuing a PhD in ethnomusicology. I'm interested in that in itself, how that is in alignment with what he's doing and how that serves clients and all of that. I'm very interested in that. And one of the things that I saw in a post that he made a while back on Instagram, he had a tagline that said, "What or who heals the healers?" And it's so interesting because a lot of us that are in leadership capacities throughout life, who do we go to? Who fills our cup, who pours into us, who helps us to expand, grow, and stretch and become the best version of who we are. And some of that involves healing, right? So who heals the healers? He made that statement, and it just really resonated with me. And but y'all are going to hear so much more as we dive into the journey of my man, Didier Sylvain.
Mike, really appreciate you. Thank you for that intro, that gracious intro. It's great to be with you. Great to be here just and share dialogue with you. And looking forward to exploring.
Man, I am looking forward to exploring as well. But before we jump into the exploration, I want to first give a personal shout out. We got to give a shout out to our man, Sean Dove.
Oh yeah, brother Dove. Chief Dove.
Chief Dove, right?
Yeah. Dove Soars. Hashtag Dove Soars.
Dove Soars, right? Of the Corporation for Black Male Achievement. I mean, this brother is doing the doggone thing, but he's also one that I highly respect. He's a friend, mentor of mine. And when he mentions that, hey, there's a brother that you need to connect with, I connect. I don't even need any other intro. I'm just like, just hook it up and we take it from there. So I want to give a shout out to my man, Sean Dove.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me hop on that. Real quick. So yeah, Chief Dove, I say this often whenever I connect with someone that he puts in touch with me. When Sean does that, I pay attention because there's always like just an alignment and connection there. And for anyone who hasn't yet, Pete Brother Dove's latest written contribution to the world, I To Him America, yes. Just a beautiful memoir and just written exploration of his own journey into manhood, into leadership, in his quest to love and lead Black men and young boys. And it's just a beautiful testimony and invitation for all of us to step into our greatest gifts and contributions. So shout out to Chief Dove.
Look, and I'm in the process of reading his book right now. Brother got a story. Like, You see him, what you see, oh man, it's more than meets the eye. He is the epitome, or he's the, the representation of the iceberg, where you see something, you think that's what it is. Right. Oh, no. The vast majority of the content is beneath the surface, completely. Below. And so speaking of shout outs, as we move into the discussion today, Black Fathers Now always likes to start out with shout outs because, who are we without our village, right? It takes a whole village to raise a child, but as adults, we need a village of support around us as well. give some shout outs, for the wind beneath your wings who allows you to be the brother that you are and how you show up in the world today. Give some shout outs and then we'll jump into your journey, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother Mike. Yeah, I just want to shout out my wife, my partner Idil, who is just both bedrock and beacon for my being. She both upholds me and what I'm after in the world, just my greatest gifts and purpose, and also inspires me. So just grateful to her every single day. I'm going to shout out to brother Tony Moss, who a creative healing practitioner who has been really instrumental in my own healing journey and healing practice, and inviting me into spaces and inquiries in my relationship with ancestry. He's been really supportive, and he's a musician, among other things, and a facilitator, and just really gifted. So I'm grateful to him, because some of my ancestral senses of inspiration and the guidance that I feel from ancestry, I think in large part has been catalyzed by his own guidance. So grateful to him. And then thirdly, I want to give a shout out to a man named Alexander Xander Grashow, who is a leadership coach as well, a trainer. I apprenticed with him for a couple of years when I was living in Brooklyn. And so much of my current sense of vocation and what I'm here and up to in the world was really sparked by some of the experiments that I did when working with him. I found a sense of beginning confidence in the coach in me. He literally called me to coach alongside him. And forever grateful for that blessing and that invitation. He, at the time, it was an organization called Good Wolf Group. And now I believe his project that he's up to now is called How to Change Everything. So just want to give a shout out to Xander Grashow.
Brother. And it's interesting. You mentioned that he called you up to coach with him, right? And it's interesting when you and I are both in the coaching space. And what I emphasize to people about coaching is not about creating something that's not there. It's about somebody being able to see something that you may not have seen before and to call that thing out. Just like you were called out to, step into your calling as a coach, which you may not have seen yourself. Someone else was there to pull that out of you. That's the importance of coaching, of guidance, of having individuals who have this divine inspiration to be able to see around corners and beyond walls. And when I say the corners and walls, I'm talking about that are inside of you. And to me, that was such a powerful, testimony. But then the other part to it is you mentioned the ancestral sense of inspiration that you've also garnered through some of your experiences and the relationships. And you mentioned your name is Didier Sylvain, right? And the only Didier I've ever come across before was a famous footballer, Didier Drogba. And he's from the Coast.
I taught him everything he knows.
So speaking of the ancestral connection, your name, right? Yeah. What is the connection of, to your name? I mean, is there, have you gone through from the ancestral roots of your name? And give us a little bit of that, man.
Yeah, no, I really love that question. It's actually a question that I often ask. I'm gonna just do a quick plug real quick. I'm not sure if I have this available, but last year I released a card. I'll get to your question in a moment.
No problem.
Mike, last year I released a card deck. Mm-hmm. It's called Coherence. Just a number of different activations for self-discovery. And one of the questions is, what's the story of your name? And I love that question. It's a question that I often ask to people. So I said Didier Sylvain, which would be Anglophone way to describe it. It's a French name. Didier Sylvain is one way to say it. And, my people are from Haiti.
Okay.
My most recent people are from Haiti. And so inherited the French name via colonization. And also it's a name that's been given to me. Mm-hmm. So Didier translates to, I think, the Latin for desiderio, which means something like desire or longing, which very much, I think, describes a lot of what I'm up to in the world, a sense of often that there's a space between my vision for the world and my current reality. And I'm constantly trying to get after the space between vision and current reality. And to me, that's a lot of what leadership is about. Leadership activation is like discerning the space between our visions and our current realities, and in between it. And to me, that's what longing fuels. My last name, Sylvain, translates to of the forest, which also really resonates with me. There were times in my history when I would really resent the name. I would resist the name. I never was just like, yo, call me Didier X. Like I never was on that necessarily, but I definitely felt a sense of resistance to a bloody legacy of enslavement and colonization that my name carries. So it only was when I looked into the actual meaning of the name and found an incredible resonance, because I've always found a deep sense of peace, grounding, joy, a sense of home when I've been in forests, especially bamboo forests. I'm not sure what that is. It feels old to me. But it's something that affirms a sense of who I am. And so the name together, Longing of the Forest, to me is I think a poetic, but also very personal, meaningful kind of expression of the natural aspects of who we are. Like I do believe that there's like an essential nature to us all, that we get to call forth through how we've been shaped, how we've been socialized. We get to merge and call forth who we really are through our socialization, through our shaping, through the oppression, through all of it. And so my name reminds me of some of that too. The last thing I'll say, I grew up playing soccer. I grew up playing football. So when people talk about Drogba, I do make that joke that I taught him everything he knows, because I happen to play football. I used to, at least, a lot. And I did spend a year of my life in Ivory Coast in middle school. So where Drogba's from. In any event, I appreciate the question, brother. That's how I would start to respond to it.
Oh, wow. It's interesting. As you were speaking, everything that came to mind was discovery, right? Like everything to me just comes back to discovery. And, you just from our brief interactions and text back and forth, and even our conversations now, and then what I've seen, you post on social and everything, it comes back to discovery and this curiosity, right? And when I think about the gifts that I personally have in life, my gifts revolve around curiosity and communication, right? Being able to effectively communicate in a wide array of, settings with different people from different backgrounds, being able to find some, connection piece, some bridge. But then also my curiosity is like, I might not be the most interesting individual, but I'm always going to be the most interested individual in the world, right? And so when I hear you speak, and then when I look at, the concept of pursuing a PhD in ethnomusicology and some of your background and your journey, it's just like, there's this curiosity, this theme of curiosity, this theme of discovery. And then you connect it back to your name. It's just, to me, like you mentioned, that through line. Like for me, I think there's a through line as well. There's this spiritual divine nature inside of all of us that's set. And it's our job throughout this life to unearth that thing and discover and figure this thing out. And it's never an end date, right? It's a perpetual, growth process. And so it was powerful just hearing you describe it. My mind went straight to discovery, curiosity,
It's interesting hearing you describe that distinction between being interesting and being interested. That's something that my first coach and trainer said in my early 20s, a woman named Gertie O'Leary. And that always really, really excited me when she said that. She also said that answers close down thinking. And so to me, there's an incredible gift in the living in wonder, the willingness to continually inquire into the unknown. We know that we don't know what we don't know, but we don't know, like we don't know what we don't know. We don't, so it's a posture in life. I don't claim to master this or be a teacher in this necessarily, but it is something that I'm committed to, which is continually learning, continually discerning what's my learning edge, living in questions, thinking in questions. They say that if you change your questions, you change your life. There's actually a book by that name, which is an excellent book, I think, for coaches. And to me, that's real, so our coaches, our questions shape our world. You know,
Mm.
so part of what I'm up to in this life is also cultivating people's capacity and willingness to ask powerful questions of themselves, of their people, not to interrogate, not to intimidate, but to actually invite people into their own awareness, to invite people to step into their own fullness, their own greatness, their own dopeness,
Yes.
and to make their greatest contribution, whether it is in the position of a manager for your people, whether it's the position of a father, right, for your children or spouse, um, whether it's for just a community member, right? Like we get to invite possibility
Mm.
rather than limit it,
Ooh.
continually, right? So that definitely is a ontological consideration. It's a way of being
Mm.
that speaks very much to who I am.
Man, dude, like you just said, answers close down thinking, but then you also mentioned invite possibility instead of limiting it, right? And it's so interesting because in the culture that we're currently living in and navigating through, and we understand goals. We've heard the term, or heard the statement: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, and everybody should be goal oriented. And you think about, like, how education has set us up, where you go for a certain amount of time and you end with a piece of paper or a degree. And historically speaking, that was the end point. That was the finish line, the graduation. Only for us to realize that once you graduate, that's when the learning really starts. You know what I'm saying? And so it's an
Right.
interesting perspective. Answers close down thinking. But then let's think about where we're living now in 2022, where we have every answer that we could imagine in our pocket,
Totally.
right? The whole notion of thinking and creative thought process and discourse. I was having a conversation with one of my buddies not long ago, how when we were talking about sports, right? And somebody would say, "Oh man, you remember back in 92 when homeboy had 30 points and 5 rebounds?" No, he didn't. He had 17 points and 11 rebounds. Yeah, he did. He had 30 points and 9. You would
Right.
go back and forth. And what was interesting about it, it created discourse, dialogue, emotion, connection, and nobody had access to the actual data. So nobody had answers. Whereas because of our phones and because of the activity, that or the access that we have now, we don't discourse and dialogue like that anymore, right? We're not open to the possibility of maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Let's connect. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
Yeah.
it's fascinating. As you said that, that's where my mind went.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. I'm not sure that every single person on the planet relates to that, the sense that that type of discourse or just back and forth exploration of what is true, and just in the absence of relying on any type of algorithm or data or Google, whatever. I'm not going to suggest that every single person on the planet relates to that, because I know there are plenty of oratory like traditions that continue right around the world. But I will say, I think what you say about memory is really interesting. Because one person will say one person got 32 points, another person say they got no, it was 30 points. And this often comes up in my coaching. I don't know if you've noticed this too, Mike, is that memory, and there's tons of research on this, which is super fascinating. Like memory is a fluid thing that actually changes and transforms depending on where we're at in any given state or moment. So in one given moment, given I may be in a certain state of mind or energy, and my memory of something will be dependent on that. And so I think part of what I'm up to in my work is to support people with the process of meaning making, because that's what memories are. Basically, right? It's just how we make meaning from the life we've lived, and how we discern what parts of all that life that we've lived, what parts of all that history do we want to carry forward? What do we want to leave behind? What newness do we want to step into? But we get to make meaning through it all, on who we've been, who we are, what we stand for, what's worth fighting for, what's worth loving for, all that. And memory is one resource in the process.
Ooh, my goodness. Memory is a resource in the process. And to your point, I was just listening to an interview recently, and I think the conversation revolved around, you know, the accuracy of most people's memory, or the accuracy of the memories that we recall. And they had some statistic, and I don't want to, you know, be wrong with it, but it literally was well over 50% of the memories that I recalled were not 100% accurate when they did some type of study. And it was fascinating because, to your point, it's the context. It's the emotion that's currently in the moment. It's what you're thinking about, how this is, you know, the environmental, the epigenetic factors that are coming into play, connected with the memory that you have associated with that one thing that becomes a trigger, which causes you to call it this. But the reality is it might be something totally different. But it also lets you know that each person's memory, even with the same experience, is like an observation, may be totally different, right? Totally. Somebody looks at one thing, or you know, you sit down and have food, and somebody thinks this is the best meal they've ever had, and the other person is like, dude, I'm never coming here again.
Yeah, this is doo-doo.
It's doo-doo, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that's each person's personal perspective based off of their history, their experience, and also what's going on inside of them at the current moment.
Definitely. And so we get to, as coaches, we get to support people to get clear on what perspectives we hold, where our blind spots are in our work lives, in our personal lives, in our relationships, as fathers, as colleagues, as whatever. Like, where are the blind spots? What am I not seeing? What are the limits of my paradigm, right? Like the unquestioned assumptions I make about who I'm supposed to be or whatever, like those create blind spots. So we get to support people to discern what they are. And also the conversations often that we're avoiding on the other side. Conversations with ourselves, with our fears, right? With our anxieties, but also with our people. So I appreciate what you're saying about discerning the limits of our perspectives, because those are the thresholds for discovery, to use your word. Those are the thresholds for breakthrough. Those are the thresholds for leadership evolution. So that's what we get to attend to in the coaching space. Yes.
And this was actually a really great segue. You mentioned, you know, the thresholds of how you've evolved or evolution through a person's life, their journey. Talk to us a little bit about your story as well. You know, we have the story of, you know, the history of your name and, you know, being of Haitian descent. But talk to us a little bit about your journey, which led you down the path that you're currently on now. Because again, I believe that's where people have a tendency to connect with individuals, is understanding like, okay, what was the spark? What was the catalyst? You know, aside from just the coaches, what were some of the things which led you down this path to start this discovery process, which led you to where you are now, just impacting the world in a magnificent way?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. Lots of different ways I can describe it, and through a little bit of a congested head in mind, I'll just see what emerges this time. So I mentioned I was born in New York, child of Haitian immigrants. My dad, growing up, he worked always in like operations, in business context, like an operations guy. I learned something about pragmatism from him at an early age. My mom worked in international development for most of her life. I learned something about service from her. I grew up with two older brothers. I learned something about music from them. In school, undergrad, I studied economics, philosophy, and music. And so that combination, I think, expresses in a way that, you know, that people talk about being left brain, right brain. That actually feels true to me. And I mentioned Gertie O'Leary, my first coach. So I was 23. I participated in a leadership fellowship called Coro. And it was a 9-month fellowship. I had a coach. We did group coaching, peer coaching. And Gertie said that leaders develop leaders. And that exploded my brain. And I've been pursuing that promise ever since. I worked for a few years in the management consulting space, worked for Deloitte for a few years. Meanwhile, just refining some of my coaching chops, knowing that it's something that I love. I worked in philanthropy for some time for a foundation, doing some coaching more and more. And I kept finding that the leaders that I was supporting, people running these social enterprises around the world, the leaders that I would show up for they often were the bottlenecks to the progress that they wanted to see.
Ooh.
And so there I discovered, oh, there's another side to this leadership game. There's another side to, if leadership is about how we mobilize others, how we mobilize the resources around us, then life alignment is around how we mobilize ourselves. It's how we mobilize the resources within. And both are required. It's a dance, right? The personal and the collective are interwoven, right? So my work started addressing both, right? And I began to do some life alignment coaching that supported folks to get super clear on their assignment, like what they're here to give in the world, their greatest gifts, the paradigms that get in the way, and what pragmatism is required to discipline oneself to continually get after their vision. That I found kept complementing in my coaching skill building based training that often showed up sometimes in my leadership work. So I hold both the leadership and life alignment work. I hold both. And I love both. A few years ago, I started my own practice. After the apprenticeship that I mentioned, I discovered my capacity to make impact was greater by building my own practice. And I never thought I would be an entrepreneur or someone who runs their own practice. But part of me that cherishes the flexibility and the freedom that running one's own practice affords, like that's something that just works for me, you know. So, and also I'm a scientist in a way. I'm constantly experimenting, constantly trying new things. I mentioned I put out a card deck last year, like that was an experiment. And so running my own practice also allows me or supports me in trying things out, putting it out in the world, giving people a chance not to like what I share, because it's continually feedback for me.
Yes.
Either way. And the spirit of adventure, the spirit of experimentation delights me, you know. So that's what fuels me, you know, in a day to day. I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, what are we going to create today? What are we going to co-create today? And what conversation and what experience? And it's a great honor, right? I feel super blessed and privileged to be walking a path that feels aligned on a solar level.
Wow, man, dude, I'm gonna tell you, alignment, and you are a life alignment coach. I mean, this is 100% in line with what you're supposed to be doing, and it's so interesting because you take it back to when you were 23 years old. There was something inside of you that had you in this direction, even though you did different things. You were still doing the thing.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess my question would be, even taking it back a little bit, you mentioned, you know, from your parents, you learned pragmatism and service. From your brothers, you learned music. Right. But it also seemed like there must have been an environment which created the space for you to be free to do this internal discovery, for you to get to this place in life so early. So as a personal development coach myself, you know, I'm 42 now, but what was interesting, this thing has evolved over about the last 10 years or so. Right. So growing up, it was, you know, I want to be a doctor when I grow up because that's what I see. And I want to be a this when I grow up. And I went to Georgia Tech and majored in engineering, and that didn't work. So my degree ended up being economics from Georgia Tech. And, you know, I pursued sales and started doing this and was in this industry and that industry. And what's interesting, the through line to coaching has always been there for me. Right. Communication has always been there for me. My mother said I was talking in sentences at 11 months, right? So I know it's crazy, but it was there. You know what I'm saying? And so to that point, I had support, but I didn't have the environment to cultivate that thing to then pursue it earlier. It was something that came into play for me a little later. What was the environment that you grew up in that allowed this thing to manifest so early?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So I grew up in a very disciplined home, super disciplinary. Like my pops is no joke. I grew up with my maternal grandmother, no joke. The rules were clear on how you be in the crib, and
yes, right.
if anyone can relate to that, you relate to it.
Yeah.
And like always. And so I grew up hyper vigilant of my own presence, and having an awareness at an early age of others around me. And I learned very early that it's important to create a sense of order. around oneself. I learned very early that when people get angry, it's not safe. I learned very early that you're responsible for other people's peace. I learned very early that one of the greatest things you can do in life and be in life is to be of service to others. And all of this, including the musical kind of shapings, both my brothers were DJs. My father was a big music lover too. But all that musical upbringing too, I think also cultivated a deep capacity for listening. And so listening is the key interpersonal skill, right? We know that. And not only as leaders, but as humans.
That's right.
And so I think the combination of all of those things shaped a sensitive human that developed, I'm speaking about myself in the third person, but like developed the capacity and developed and continue to a sensitivity to the life around me. I find myself today just continually investing in how can I sharpen my listening? How can I sharpen my listening? Like, what are people not saying? Like, what's the beauty? What's the magic? What's the music beneath people's words? What's the song? What's the poetry? What's the longing beneath people's words? And what are they not saying? Or what's the truth embedded within it? What's the question embedded within it? What's the longing? What's the love? All of that. I listen in that way, and not always, but that's something that's available for me. And I'm attributing my earliest shaping to that, right? In part, I think part of that is I came into this planet with that. I think that was reinforced with the way I was socialized. So, wherever you fall in the nature nurture thing, I say both, right? I say both. And I often say, we don't need to limit ourselves to whether we came to be who we are because of nature or nurture. There also is this thing called choice. So I believe it's part of my nature to be an exceptional listener. I think it's part of the nurturance that supported me, that told me that listening is required for my own survival. And then I choose every day actively to practice the skill, to sharpen the skill. Because it brings me joy, so that's the musician in me, right? I'm a musician, so that's how I would start to, I guess, respond to this moment to talk about my journey, and I appreciate you inviting it.
Man, look, it's not just nature, it's not just nurture, it's also choice. And one of the things that you mentioned early on, you became hypervigilant of your own presence. So fellas, ladies listening too, because y'all like to tune into what we're talking about. Being hypervigilant of your own presence, right? Understanding who you are, really spending time with yourself. There's a difference between being by yourself and spending time with yourself. If I say I'm just by my wife, okay, I'm just there. If I say I'm spending time with my wife, I'm paying attention. So to be hypervigilant of your own presence, you must pay attention. And so that's extremely important for you to unlock. But brother, you were built for this. It's so, even down to your name, to your experiences, to the household that you grew up in, to that hypervigilance of your own self-awareness, to now, brother, you were built for this. And what I say to you, which is so I'm being for real, I'm just like, man, continue doing what you're doing and continue sharing this part of you, because it helps to inspire us with kids that are coming up to say, look, we need to create spaces for them to, in essence, blossom into who they're supposed to be. I'm not here to force you to become anything. I'm here to create an environment in which you can freely blossom into who you're supposed to be. And I'm here to pour gasoline on that fire.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for that reflection, that affirmation, brother. I really appreciate it. I receive it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I gave it to you. It's yours.
I appreciate that.
Well, and I don't want to keep you much longer, man.
I'd be down to keep rocking. This is if it weren't for this damn COVID, I'd be good to rock.
Yeah, and look, and so for y'all that aren't watching the video, if you're just listening, you wouldn't notice that my man is not on 10 like he usually is. Like he's got a chill demeanor if you watch his videos. You know, he's got that cool vibe, right? But he's got a little more energy typically. And that's because, you know, he's recovering from, you know, this thing that's been floating around. So we wish you well in your recovery process. Just continue doing that because we need you back at 100% because the world needs you. You know what I'm saying?
That, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, keep it going. Keep it going. So before we, I guess, finish up, man, is there anything else that you like to leave with the Black Fathers Now family? You know, leave your tags so that people can follow you across the board and all of that good stuff, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. And thank you again for what you're doing. I think it's so important, so critical. I don't know anyone else stewarding conversations about Black fatherhood in the way that you are. And to me, it's just so critical, not only for current fathers, but also aspiring fathers like me. Yes. And I just want to thank you for it. And I feel encouraged. I feel loved, and I feel supported. You know, and I know that everyone who participates in the podcast and what you're up to feels the same. You know, so shout out to what you're up to.
Thank you.
For those that are interested in life alignment work, life alignment coaching, for those that are interested in integrating the full truth of who you are to make your greatest contribution to the world. If you feel that you're under leveraging your gifts, your talents, if you feel that you're unclear on what the next season is of your leadership in life, come to Coherence. So this is a group coaching experience, a 12-week group coaching experience for creators and leaders of color that are interested in making their greatest contribution. And the next time we rock is in the summer. So you can find info on that on my website, which is didiersylvain.com. /coherence, and it'd be dope to have you come through. We can just hop on a conversation just to talk about what you're after. For those that are interested to take up Mike's invitation for being with yourself, and I really love the way you said that, Mike. I heard a distinction between solitude and isolation, right? Like solitude is a space where we can really discern who we are and what we're up to. Right. For those that appreciate that, check out the card deck, didiersylvain.com /products. And the Coherence card deck is something that I think could be really supportive for folks who enjoy inquiry in their own space to self-discover. Other than that, I'd say like hit me up on social. Any way I could be supportive, give a shout. Want to shout you out again, Brother Mike, just for the invitation. I really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate what you're up to. And yeah, thank you.
No doubt. Now, look, everybody visit didiersylvain.com, DIDIER Sylvain.com. I'll have the link in the show notes for you all to follow, to grab the card deck. So you hit products, you can join Coherence, and then next cohort starts in the summertime. Check them out. Literally, you heard a little bit of his story. Follow him on social. Check out the brother, man. He really brings some unique perspectives to the table, and it's really all centered around life alignment. And that's what we all need. Look, when we're aligned and we're connected, we have the capacity for synergy. And when we have synergy, get out the way. All right. Well, man, I want to thank you, man. I salute you for what you have going on. We're going to keep you prayed up for healing to get done with all this stuff so you can be back 100, bringing it out. You know what I'm saying?
I appreciate that,
yeah, man. And as always, everybody make sure to follow Black Fathers Now on social. Yeah. Share this episode out. Get it out to your friends. Reach out to Didier Sylvain. Let them know you heard about him on Black Fathers Now. If you don't already know the brother, you probably already know him. And until next time, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace. Yo, fellas, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And always visit blackfathersnow.com, as well as follow Black Fathers Now on virtually every social media platform you can think of. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. Just follow us and engage with us, man. Look forward to hearing from you. And I guess until next time, I'll holler at you. Peace.